always so great to be back with you guys and be able to share with you. I so appreciate the ability to do that. If you were here a few weeks ago, you got to be a part of my message in the dark. That was pretty interesting. If you weren't here, what happened was Pastor Chad was up and he was doing a few announcements and getting ready to invite me up, and it was literally about 15 seconds before I was going to come up and start to speak, and a thunderstorm was rolling in and took the power out to the church. Everything went black. There was just no power for anything. We had a little bit of emergency lights on the side, and that was about it. So my brain started to go into tactical mode. Okay, I got about 15 seconds. What am I going to do here? Okay, there's no lights. That's probably okay. You don't have to actually look at me. And then any of y'all that were taking a nap, I wouldn't see that. So that was okay. And then I wouldn't have any audio. And I thought, well, that's okay. I can project. I can just talk louder. That'll be all right. And I had scriptures all queued up to be up on the screen. And of course, we weren't going to be able to do that. And then, if you remember, if you were here, I had that message set for people to come to the altar for prayer. We had the prayer team up here, and we were praying for those in our life that are lost, those that are on the broad road, and we wanted to intercede for you and pray with you about getting them on the narrow road. And so I had music queued up that when that was about to start, that music would, kind of help set the tone for that and take away the kind of the dead silence of all that, because we kind of feel like we need that. And so that's all running through my mind. We're not going to have any of that. And Pastor Chad looked at me after we kind of got through there's no power, no lights, and said, Pastor Kevin, what do you want to do? Can you preach in the dark? And I just answered, and this is all 15 seconds that's going through my head. I just answered what God gave me. And I just said, Satan's not going to stop whatever God wants to do here tonight. And so, you got great. So we just rolled with it. We rolled with it, and we had no lights, we had no sound, and I delivered the message, and even while I was delivering it, I was thinking, do I not do the prayer thing at the end? Because we're not going to have any music, and it's dark, and is that going to be weird, and what do I do? And I had already talked to Heather and the prayer team about coming up, and I just thought, no, we just got to do this. We're just going to do it. And so we did. We got to the end, and the prayer team came up, and God moved. God just moved. And people came, and it didn't matter that we didn't have music or any of that. People just came, and they laid stuff down, and they asked for prayer, and so it was just cool to watch God move, and the thing is, God knew, all that. He knew we weren't going to have power. He knew we weren't going to have lights. He knew we weren't going to have sound and scriptures on the screen and cool music to try to bring people up. And the fact is, he didn't need any of that. And so it was a couple days later, I woke up and I grabbed my phone and checking email and text real quick, and there was an email from somebody there. They were checking in with me about something, asking about something in the email, and then in there they said, hey, by the way, great message Monday, thank you so much. And as I read that, it immediately hit me what my next message was. And I knew I was going to be speaking tonight, and I was toying with different things about what that message was, and it hit me right in that moment. This was about 2 days after that Monday. God doesn't need much. Just give me what you got. Just give me what you got. I don't need LED lights, and I don't need sound, and guess what? I don't need music to bring people to prayer to set the mode. Because if I'm going to move my spirit through a group of people, I'm going to move my spirit. I don't need you to orchestrate all that. I don't need much. You just give me what you got and watch what I'll do. And so that was clear to me that became the message. He did some cool stuff that Monday night, and then on top of that, he gave me a message for this Monday night. So it was cool. And so I started thinking about all the people in the Bible that God used that came to the table with what appeared to be nothing. In some cases less than nothing. I started thinking about Peter, the fisherman. On the day of Pentecost, he preached. No LED lights, no sound system, no cool music. We don't know how many he preached to. The Bible doesn't say exactly. We know it was thousands. So he preached. God said, Peter, just give me what you got. Man, I'll do the rest. Just give me what you got. And so he did. He preached. And what we do know is that 3,000 people were saved that day. And 3,000 people went down to the river and were baptized. And the New Testament church was started. With no lights, no sound systems. Peter just gave him what he had. I think about the story of Gideon. I don't know if you're familiar with Gideon or not. Gideon was one of the judges. And during the period of the judges in the Bible, it wasn't always such a great time for the Israelites. God would raise up a judge to lead them. They didn't have kings. This is before the time of the kings. And he would raise up a judge to lead them spiritually and militarily in some cases. And things would go great. And they'd be worshiping God and honoring God. And then they'd fall away. time would go by, and they would fall away, and they'd begin to worship other idols and forget about all the things God had done for them. And then terrible things would start to happen, and they would cry out once again for God to come in and save them. And God, being so merciful, so full of grace, as he's done for so many of us so many times, came in and rescued them. He would raise up another judge to lead them through whatever the trials were. And this was the story of Gideon. What happens is an angel of the Lord comes and appears to Gideon. And here's what the angel says. The angel says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." And we're going to come back to that mighty warrior, because it's kind of funny. And Gideon's response was basically, "The Lord is with me? How can that be? The Lord is with us? Look around, we're in a mess. We're in just a huge mess. Things were terrible." The Midianites and the Amalekites had come in, and they had just run roughshod over all the land. The herds, the flocks, their crops. They had just destroyed everything and had occupied the lands. The Israelites had taken to living in caves and hiding in crevices. Things were so bad. And so the angel said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." And he said, "How can that be? It's a mess here. Look at this. How can the Lord be with us?" We've heard the stories from our fathers about how God led us out of Egypt and out of bondage. And we've heard about all that. But we look around now and we don't see God. How can that be? How can that be? And so God responds. In Judges 6, 14 and 15, here's what he says. "The Lord answered, 'I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together.' But Lord," Gideon asked, "how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." What Gideon was saying is, my family's a bunch of wusses, and I'm the biggest wuss of them all. How can I do anything? In fact, we've unearthed what we believe is a photo of Gideon, actually. Archaeologists unearthed this photo, and I think we have it on the screen. We're going to put it up here in a second. That was Gideon at the time of the judge. I know it looks a lot like Steve Urkel, I realize that, but we actually believe that's been verified. Pastor Chad got a bunch of theologians together and biblical scholars. They verified that actually is Gideon. So here's the thing. Gideon was from the tribe of Manasseh. And the tribe of Manasseh actually became known as the half-tribe of Manasseh. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The primary reason is after they had been led through the desert by Moses and they came to the River Jordan, they're getting ready to cross the river. And of course, Joshua ended up leading them across. Moses didn't get to cross. But just prior to that, the tribe of Manasseh came and said, "Hey," about half of them said, "Hey, we'd like to settle here on this side. Man, there's plenty of land, and it's good land, and our flocks can flourish here, and we think we'd like to just stay on this side." And so God said, okay, you guys can stay on that side. So half of them went across, half of them stayed. And then also, after they crossed, God had told them to clear out the Canaanites. Where the Canaanites were living, he said, "Man, get rid of them all. You got to wipe them out. This is the land I promised you. You got to take care of them." Well, they weren't obedient in that. They didn't follow his instructions in doing that wholly. And so the tribe of Manasseh was kind of looked at as less than and referred to as the half-tribe. And so Gideon was from the half-tribe. And he felt that his clan within that tribe was pretty weak, and he himself was pretty low, didn't have much to offer. But here's what God said in verse 16. After Gideon says, "Man, we're a bunch of wussies, it can't be me." The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together." So what happens? Gideon puts together an army of 32,000 men, and he's going to go into the Amalekite and the Midianite camp, which is huge, by the way, and he's going to take them out. But God says, no. You're not using 32,000 men. Way too many men. Way too many men, Gideon. Hey, you're pretty awesome, and I see some stuff in you that you didn't see, but you're not using 32,000 men. So through some kind of unusual processes, God whittles down the 32,000 to 300. He says, "Now you're good. Now you can go and do the work that I've got for you." And so Gideon goes in. He leads the 300 men into a camp. The Bible says the camels of the Midianites and the Amalekites could no more be counted than the sands on the seashore. But he led that army of 300 in to victory. Ultimately, other men of Israel joined, and when it was all said and done, 120,000 enemy soldiers lay dead because of what God did through Gideon. See, God just went to him and said, "And I know you don't have much, but I know what you've got. I know your heart. You just give me what you got. Just give me what you got, and watch what I'll do. I think about Moses. We talk so much about Moses. He goes to the mountaintop and meets with God there, and that's where God says, Moses, you're going to lead my people out of Egypt. You're going to lead them out of slavery, out of bondage. And Moses has all the excuses. God, me? Why me, God? You can't mean me. God, and what do I do when I go there? Like, I don't even know your name. They're going to ask me who sent me, and I don't know, what do I tell them your name is? And God, I'm kind of slow of speech, God. I don't really speak well. You know, my oratory skills aren't too good. I kind of stutter and stammer. You don't mean me, God. And God actually gets a little ticked. And he says, yes, I do mean you. And I know all that stuff about you, Moses. You think I didn't know that? I know all that. You just take your staff, and you go, and you take Aaron with you, and you will lead my people out of Egypt. You just give me what you got. I know you don't think it's much, but you just give me what you got, and you watch what I'll do. And of course, if you know the story, Moses led 2 million Israelites out of Egypt through the desert to the edge of the Promised Land. So we've got these giants of the Bible, you know, and sometimes it can be hard to relate. So let's look at some people that are maybe a little closer to our time, some people that we know or know of, that we could actually hear and see and maybe touch. There was this kid in North Carolina, raised on a dairy farm. You know, nothing special, no special gifts or talents that anyone can necessarily see. In fact, when he was a young boy, he applied to join this youth group in his community, and they turned him down because they said he was too worldly. And so he goes on and ultimately kind of bounces around in college, goes to 3 different colleges, and ends up getting a bachelor's degree in anthropology. Never did get any formal seminary training. Wouldn't appear to have a whole lot from the outside in terms of use for God, but gave his life to Christ as a teenager, and God was watching him the whole time and said, I know it may not seem like you've got much. I know this group said you were too worldly, but I know what's in your heart, and I know what you've got. You just give me what you got, and watch what I'll do. And so Billy Graham gave him what he had. Turned out to be the greatest evangelist of our era. There was a kid born of Chinese immigrants. His mother died in childbirth, giving birth to him. His father ultimately remarried, and his stepmother got killed in a car crash when he was 9. And then 3 years later, at the age of 12, his dad dies of cancer. So 12 years, loses his mother that he never knew, loses his stepmother at age 9, loses his dad at age 12. Terrible start for a young boy. God was watching down. God knew. He said, just give me what you got. As a teenager, he turned his life over to Christ, ended up making his way through college, went on, got a master's in divinity, felt called to start a church. Started a small church in Southern California. That church grew to 4,000 people. He speaks all over the world now, Christian conferences. He's an accomplished writer, author of best-selling books. Terrible start, terrible tragedy. Nothing, just nothing to offer. But God knew. God knew what he had. He went on to write a number of best-selling books. In fact, the book that became his bestseller, when he wrote it, his publishers and others came to him and said, this is going to be big. This could bring you $1 million in royalties. Not $1 million in sales, not 1 million books, $1 million in royalties to the author. And he said, I don't want it. I don't want it. They didn't know what it was going to do at that point, but he said, whatever it is, I don't want it. And he said, when asked about it later, he said, I didn't say I didn't want it because I'm such a great man of God, which he is. He said, I don't want it. I didn't say that because I'm such a great man of God. He said, I said it because I'm a horrible man. I'm a man like any other man. And I don't know what that kind of money would do to me. I don't know that that kind of money wouldn't pull me away from what God's got for me. And so he signed those royalties away before it ever hit the shelves. And the book ultimately didn't bring in that $1 million in royalties. It brought in $5 million in royalties. Yeah. And so today, that $5 million has helped build hospitals and schools in Africa. It's dug wells where there's no water. It's helped to mitigate sex trafficking all over the world and to feed hungry kids and families in the inner cities of this country. The book was Crazy Love, and Francis Chan was the author. God saw what he went through at an early age. Terrible tragedy. But said, I know what you've got. I know what's in your heart. Just give me what you've got. in Block 12. We can bring this closer to home. Those of you who call this church your home know our pastor, Dr. Chris Stevens. You know some of his story, most of you. Born into a broken home, stepfathers, step-uncles, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of dysfunction, physically and sexually abused as a boy, got into drugs at a very young age, became a drug addict, a dope dealer, and all the dysfunction and awful things that go along with that life. Ends up at 22, overdosed in a hospital, and just cries out to God. A God that he wasn't following, a God that he wasn't paying any attention to. He cried out and said, do something with me. I can't do this anymore. Just take whatever's left of me and do something. And God was just waiting, you know. God looked down and said, I got it. Thank you. Thank you, finally, for giving me what you got, which I know looks like that's less than nothing, but I'll take it. And he did. And he did. And he got out of that hospital, and he turned his life fully over to Christ, and he went to church, and he started seeking out education, and he went on to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and a doctor's in church growth. 19 years ago, called to lead this church. Unbelievable growth in this church over the last 20 years. Now he's leading the largest church in this region. Over 6,000 people in attendance every week. The 22nd fastest growing church of the top 100 churches last year in the nation. All this because he got to a point where he said, I'll just give you what I got. And that's all God wants. All God wants is us to give him what he's got. Peter, Gideon, and Moses, and Billy Graham, and Francis Chan, and Chris Stevens, some of these people, they seem larger than life to us, you know? Great men of the faith. But every one of them came with, from the world's perspective, came with nothing. Less than nothing in most people's perspective from how they view it. But the Bible is clear that God is so much more interested in our hearts on what's on the inside than what's on the outside. Listen to Proverbs 4:23. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Proverbs 15:13 says, a happy heart makes the face cheerful. It doesn't say a happy face makes the face cheerful. It says a happy heart makes the face cheerful. He's concerned with our hearts. After Jesus had ascended, he died, been buried, rose from the dead, and then ultimately ascended into heaven, the disciples were faced with a dilemma. See, they had to replace Judas among them. See, Judas, as I'm sure most of you know, was the disciple that betrayed Jesus. And out of tremendous guilt and shame, Judas went to a field and hung himself. And so now the disciples were faced with who to replace him with, and they had two men that they needed to choose between. And so they had to decide, what were they going to do? So they gave them an IQ test, and then they had them each preach a sermon to check their oratory skills, and then they measured their biceps in case they got into a fight, so they knew which one could handle themselves better. No, that's not what they did. What they did was they prayed. And in Acts 1:24, we see what their simple prayer was. Lord, you know everyone's heart. Show us which one of these two you have chosen. It was that simple. They knew. They knew the Lord, and they knew that the Lord knew these men's hearts. The Lord knows all of our hearts. It didn't matter what these guys looked like, or what gifts they appeared to have, or who had better connections. What mattered was their hearts, and they knew that God knew that. And so that's what they prayed. These giants of the faith that we've talked about, they're just regular men. Regular men that, in many cases, had less to offer than many in this room. Certainly from the world's perspective, they had nothing to offer. But God knew. He knew their hearts. He knew what they had to offer. We've got giants of faith in this room. There are people in this room that many of you know that came here with less than nothing from the world's perspective. Less than nothing. And yet God has used people in this room in unbelievable ways. He has taken them from their ruins and risen them up. And now they're pouring into others. They're leading. They're raising others up. They made a decision to give God what they had. Even though it was very little, they gave God what they had. And God has done unbelievable things. Lives have been changed and transformed through what God has done through many of the people in this room. The potential inside every one of us is so much greater than we're seeing. God didn't create you to watch from the sidelines. He didn't create you to waste your life away at the end of a bottle or the end of a needle. He didn't create you to seek after the next worldly possession. He created you for greatness. No matter what you think, no matter where you are, He created you for greatness. Every one of us can be great for God. If you're a believer in God, here's what He says about you. God says you're a chosen people. God says you're dearly loved. God says you can be transformed by the renewing of your mind. God says you are sons and daughters of the King. God says you are a new creation. That's what God says about you. Like with Gideon, God says you're a mighty warrior. And all you have to do is just give Him what you got. He doesn't need much. He doesn't need lights and sound systems. He doesn't need much. Just give Him what you got. You say, I don't have anything. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It may be deep inside of you, but God knows where it is and He wants to use it. Just give Him what you got. You say, I don't feel like I do. I know you don't. Neither did Moses. Neither did Peter. Neither did Gideon. Neither did Billy Graham. Neither did Francis Chan. Neither did Pastor Chris. But God knew. And they gave Him what they had. And look what He's done. Rick Warren says this: the way you think determines the way you feel. And the way you feel determines the way you act. If you want to change the way you act, start by changing the way you think. See, Gideon didn't think much of himself, so he didn't feel like he could do anything. So he didn't. Until God came and showed him who he really was. Until God came and took the little bit that Gideon had and used it for greatness. God just cares about what's inside. He doesn't care about what others think. He doesn't care about your past. He doesn't care about the labels. He doesn't care that you're from a half-tribe. Because many of us feel like we're from a half-tribe. Dysfunction, generational curses, addictions, abuse. Many of us feel like we're from a half-tribe. But God doesn't care. He didn't care about any of that. He cares about you and the greatness inside of you, and He wants to use it. Just give Him what you've got. Because God sees a mighty warrior. If you're new here, and I encourage you, stick around. Get to know some of the mighty warriors in this ministry that God has used. Be encouraged, be uplifted. Because you are a mighty warrior. Just give Him what you've got. I didn't need lights, I didn't need cool sound, I didn't need any of that. I just needed God to work through me. That's all I pray when I come up here, is that God works through me. God, I don't have much. Just take it. Do something with it. Touch somebody. Change a life somewhere. It isn't anything I have. It's what He sees and uses. And it's in every one of you. Just give Him what you've got. I'm going to pray for us. God, You are a gracious and mighty God. God, You know all things about us, God. Even the things we don't know. God, You know our hearts. God, our potential. God, raise up in each person here. Just raise them up to live out what You have for them, God. Get us off the sidelines, God. Get us out of the bleachers, God. Get us into the game. God, get us into play the position, the role that You have for us. God, in this room there are teachers and caregivers. God, there's encouragers. God, people with a heart of generosity. God, there are those with a heart to serve Your people. God, just as You did with Gideon, God, with Peter. God, with Pastor Chris, God, hold them to their calling, God. God, we just want to see Your kingdom expanded here on earth. God, we love You for loving us, God. God, it is in the amazing and mighty name of Jesus that I pray. And all God's people said, Amen. Thank you, guys.